I said, I want to buy tickets for all the kids. And she said, what if I find a free ride? And I said, okay.
Oh, well.
I didn't think she was going to do it. But then she said, I found a free ride. And I said, who? And she said, Donald Trump. And I said, I'm suing him.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Did a public forum with Tulsi Gabbard the other day and was asked a question about Donald Trump, about his personality. And let's just be clear, because we do talk about Trump's personality quite a bit here. It's an important issue. I mean, everybody knows where Trump is on policies, and nobody knows where Kamala Harris is on policies. But if you poll the American people right now, policy after policy after policy, Donald Trump wins. He is on the side of the majority of Americans when it comes to pretty much every policy. Abortion is sort of 50-50, and that's a clouded issue. And I don't even know if it's going to compel a lot of people in this election. But on the economy, on national security, on immigration, on crime, on and on and on, and energy policy, Trump wins. And yet it's still a very close election. Why? Well, I think it's because a lot of people vote for president based on their feelings, based on emotions, based on a gut thing, not necessarily on policies. It's the old trope that, you vote for who you want to have a beer with, right? Well, the problem is Donald Trump doesn't drink beer. So now how are we going to do this? Well, let's take a look at this moment when Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was asked about Trump on a personal level. And then we'll talk about whether this makes a difference for the way people vote, whether comparing the human being Donald Trump with the human being Kamala Harris will actually work in Trump's favor. Let's watch.
Many years, on 2 occasions, I sued him. He was trying to build golf courses up in the New York City reservoir watershed. And I sued him successfully to stop that. And at one point, my wife at that time had been trying to find she wanted to go to Palm Beach for the weekend to see my mom over Easter. And I said, I want to buy tickets for all the kids. And she said, what if I find a free ride? And I said, okay.
Oh, well.
I didn't think she was going to do it. But then she said, I found a free ride. And I said, who? And she said, Donald Trump. And I said, I'm suing him. And she said, he told me he knows you're suing him, but it's okay anyway. And we ended up flying down with him, and I had a great time. I still sued him. And, but after the night that he called me after he got shot in Butler, one of the first things he said to me, he said, are you a religious person? And I said, well, I have a deep belief in God and a spirituality, which is the central organizing force of my life. And he said, I think I believe in that too now.
Now, I love that story about the free ride, and I know he's suing him, but it's okay and all that stuff. That's fun. And Kennedy is an engaging guy when you tell stories like that. But I want to dovetail now off of that last anecdote about Trump's religious belief and his spirituality and sort of, for lack of a better term, come to Jesus moment here after that bullet whizzed past his ear. Because yesterday, in keeping with this theme about Trump as a human being, Trump's personality, he appeared on Gutfeld, the highest rated late night comedy show on television. I like saying that because it pisses Jimmy Kimmel off, because it's true. And he told, a similar story. He was asked a lot of questions about this latest assassination attempt and in general, what it's been like since the first one 2 months ago. And watch this.
So if you want to be president, I have a lot of friends that wanted to run. They're thinking about maybe not doing it. But here's the only good thing is that it's always a consequential president that gets shot at. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, so far, I've been very lucky. Or something is greater than all of us.
Ooh.
Something is up there. Someone is up there, maybe watching over us.
I think he's voting for you.
Yeah. It's funny. I always thought the most dangerous job was feeding The View.
But you bring up God. You bring up God, and you've almost been killed twice. Do you think more about your own mortality and what happens after you move on?
Yeah, not about mortality, but I do think more about God because, okay, Butler was really the greatest of all miracles. If I'm not looking over there, and I mean a full turn, exactly 90 degrees, I wouldn't be here right now. Mm-hmm. And your ratings would be a little bit lower, perhaps.
Yeah. We have Kilmeade there.
We have to tell the story of how we first met. The ratings over. Remember that one week he just played that thing? But I do think about that because the chart, it was basically an immigration chart. We had our lowest numbers that we've ever had in immigration. And I very rarely use it, maybe 15, 20%. It's always on my left and it's always at the end of a speech. So now I said, bring down the chart right at the very beginning, almost like the first sentence of the speech. Bring down that chart because immigration is such a big thing now with, our country being basically taken over by Venezuela and lots of other people. So
all right, I'm just going to pause this here because there's a couple of things at play, and I just want to give you a quick analysis, and then we'll continue it. And that was, first of all, the spontaneous moment where he just decided to look upwards and talk about how someone else is watching over. And it was a very, very real human moment and an understandable and relatable moment, right? And now he's giving the details about the circumstances under which, instead of that bullet, exploding his skull in front of everyone at that moment and altering the course of history, what led into that moment where instead he happened to turn his head just that way to make the bullet just graze his ear. By the way, as you're hearing this story, I just want you to know there are still lunatics on the left who believe that both assassination attempts have been setups. They're out there. And then these people vote. These people have platforms. They still think that the whole thing was a setup, that it was a fraud, that none of this actually happened. It was all a false flag. It was all this is insane stuff. But it's important to point that out because it was real. It did happen. And what Trump is about to relate to you now, it does require some kind of explanation. And forgive him and most of us to reach the conclusion that that explanation may very well be God's will.
So I said, bring down the chart, and the chart drops down. And I go, look at those numbers. And I look over to the right and ping. Mm-hmm. And that was not, I knew something was definitely wrong. And it was a mess. I touched, I said, that's unusual.
Remember when you showed it to me?
I showed it.
Yeah, you showed it to me. You said, I know people aren't going to believe this. So Gutfeld, take a look at my ear.
That's right. We met in at the convention.
Yeah.
And I said, who am I going to show it to? We have a lot of guys. They'll say it didn't exist. And I actually did have such confidence in him. And he's really a very special guy, talented guy, good guy, great guy. And I said, if I'm going to show it, let's do it with Gutfeld.
Yes.
And that's amazing. It's amazing.
Because it happened right after.
Yeah, how did you get him to see the top of your ear?
Well, I sat in a low chair.
Okay, thank you.
But you know what? It was true. And I took the bandages off very carefully. Yeah. And I showed him. He said, "That's nasty."
Yes,
that was nasty. But
I kind of wanted to touch it, but I knew I would have been tackled.
All right, now I wanted to show you those two clips. First, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. telling this very funny, human, and relatable story about Donald Trump spontaneously, by the way. And then this moment, which also was pretty spontaneous, with a lot of spontaneous interaction there too, about Trump and about, showing him the ear and how did you see it? And I sat in a low chair and all that stuff. This is critically important here for a couple of reasons. And let me explain. As I said moments ago, there's still anywhere between 11 and 15% of the electorate who claim they are undecided, that claim they don't know who they're going to vote for. And that transcends into the battleground states, the most important battleground states right now. I told you earlier in the week, and go ahead and take a look at the video, that right now Trump is running way ahead of where he was 4 years ago and 8 years ago, mid-September, compared to Election Day. He was like 4 or 5 points behind Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden at this time in those key states. And he ended up either winning those states in 16 some of them in 20, or coming within less than 1 percentage point. Well, right now in those very same states, it's basically a dead heat, right? So his vote is underrepresented, or the pollsters have gotten a lot better. And I don't think that's the case. So he's doing very well right now. But back to that 10 to 15% who still aren't sure. They're still not committed. If you don't know where Donald Trump is on policy right now, I don't know what to tell you. We know what he's going to do. In fact, you've got 4 years in your rearview mirror to look at about what he's going to do. I think if there's hesitancy to vote for Donald Trump, especially considering the fact that his policies are popular, he is on the popular end of policies right now. Okay, then why wouldn't you vote for him, right? And the answer is because of his personality, because of who he is, because of his behaviors, because of his manner of speech, because of his aggressive nature, because, well, the best way to encapsulate all of that is because he's a New Yorker. And, you know, New Yorkers are pretty obnoxious, right? You've met New Yorkers before. And, well, he acts obnoxious sometimes. Now, I know I actually find him funny. I think that it's cool when he does a lot of the things that he does, but we're kidding ourselves if we don't recognize that some people are turned off by his style. Okay, come on. Can we admit that, please? Okay. So what's my point? There's 2 things at play here that you just saw. Not only very humanizing and likable stories about Donald Trump as a human being that actually shows him to be not just a regular guy, but a pretty funny, socially competent guy who can interact and actually, you know, convey an empathetic message to people. But also specifically sitting for 15 minutes on Gutfeld in this setting, a comedy show, going unscripted, right? And being able to interact with pretty witty people and give and take in the way that he does. Can you imagine Kamala Harris doing that? Can anybody imagine Kamala Harris doing that? Kamala Harris is so scripted. She is so controlled. She is so inauthentic. There's no possible way she could do this and keep up, right? Add to that earlier this week in Flint, Michigan, where Donald Trump chose, instead of giving his typical rally performance where he's got his podium and he's got, you know, proud to be an American blaring on the speakers, God bless the USA, and the teleprompter, and then he goes off teleprompter and he comes back on teleprompter. And what we're used to seeing in rallies, what did they decide to do instead? He sat down and interacted in a conversation with the governor of Arkansas, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and it was amazing. Say what you will about Donald Trump's political gifts, and it is a gift to be able to stand up there and deliver a speech, go off prompter, go on prompter, do stream of conscious, be funny, engage the audience, and keep people engaged. But even more importantly, is to be able to interact with somebody, talk with them, listen to what they have to say, respond to their answers, and then also their questions, and actually sort of show that you can have a conversation. That actually demonstrates to the American voter something much, much more than how you deliver a speech. My understanding from the Trump campaign is that there are at least 2 more interactive events scheduled in the future. One where Tulsi Gabbard will be asking those questions, and the other where Governor Kristi Noem will be asking the questions. They see it too. They recognize that those formats and those settings actually show Donald Trump not just in a good light, but in a different light. Hold on, that's not the Donald Trump I've seen. Hold on, this Donald Trump is likable. This Donald Trump is actually engaging. And most importantly, this is not anything that Kamala Harris will ever do, ever. She is she is ungenuine. She is inauthentic. She is scripted. She is controlled. She is fake. Donald Trump, even when he says stuff you don't like, even when he's obnoxious, even when he's, you know, completely inappropriate, he's anything but controlled. He's anything but fake and fraudulent. He's anything but scripted. And at the end of the day, that could be the difference maker in an election like this. Because say what you will about Trump, we know what he's going to do. And at least he's not a phony. So all of that happened yesterday. These stories, this interaction, this sort of new turn in the final less than 50 days till election day. You see this new approach that could actually lend itself to sort of be the final argument to get those undecideds. We know you're not happy with his behavior. We know you don't like how he tweets. We know all of this, but that's not the entirety of who he is. Look at this Trump and compare it to what you see every day from Kamala Harris. And all of that happened yesterday on the same day that the Teamsters Union basically endorsed Donald Trump. Now, I know the headlines accurately say that the Teamsters Union chose not to endorse a candidate. That's the first time they've done it since 1996, almost 30 years ago. Up until now, every single endorsement has been a Democrat. Before 96, in 92, they endorsed the Democrat. You got to go all the way back to 1988, George Herbert Walker Bush, when the Teamsters endorsed a Republican. And even then, they were really endorsing Ronald Reagan's third term. So to expect the Teamsters leadership to actually endorse Donald Trump, I think is a pretty long shot, right? Not endorsing anyone is such a repudiation to Kamala Harris that it is tantamount to an endorsement of Donald Trump, especially considering the leadership of the union released a poll that showed that their rank and file are supporting Donald Trump on an individual personal basis to the tune of almost 3-1. And what was Kamala Harris's campaign response to that? On the same day that they didn't get the Teamsters nomination, they released this, that 100+ Republican former national security officials endorsed Kamala Harris. Oh, sure, we didn't get the Teamsters endorsement, but we got the guy who used to fetch lattes for Donald Rumsfeld back in the early 2000s. He's on our side. And oh, let's not forget, we've got Dick Cheney too. That's what they've got. If they had anything better yesterday, they would have put it out there. Guys, I know that you're freaking out. I know you're worried. I know that you're looking at the polls every day. I know that you're seeing what people are saying on TV and on your Facebook page or wherever, and you're starting to think, oh God, what are we going to do? Let me just help you out here based on everything I just told you. When you actually objectively, soberly look at what's going on right now, you got to be faithful. You got to be hopeful. You've got to keep your eye on the prize here. Okay? Because based on my analysis, based on what I'm seeing right now, Trump is way better off than he has been in any of his presidential campaigns. Taylor Swift aside, I'm telling you, things are looking very good. Now, that doesn't mean this is a slam dunk. That doesn't mean that anybody should sit back and rest. No. This is going to be a fight every single day between now and election day. But we're right now in Pennsylvania, they're already voting. Tomorrow in Virginia, they start voting. Forget about election day. It's election season now, and the votes are beginning. And this is when things get intense, and this is when things get serious, and this is when we need to stick together and keep the focus, right? And part of that is sharing these videos. If I say something every day that you find inspirational and hopeful, or maybe even makes you think a second time about the way you're hearing politics analyzed everywhere else, share that video. If you don't want to share the entire show that you're watching right now, go back, because every single segment is broken down individually. Find it on whatever platform you're sitting on right now and share that video, either publicly or privately, it doesn't matter. But we've got to get the word out, and we've got to keep people together and focused on where we are right now.